2 weeks ago, the announcement that many HDB owners were eagerly waiting for. Ever since Lawrence Wong said in 2017 that HDBs would be returned to the government after their lease ends, he said that don't assume all HDB flats will become eligible for CERS and that they will be returned to the HDB when the lease is up after the 9 years lease is done. And then there were articles like, what if I outlease the lease of my HDB flat? Why my first home purchase is a HDB flat, I may just outleave. So these were issues that has actually resulted in the HDB price index falling all the way since 2014 and even 2018 and 2019, even though at the same time our property price index for the private property sector increased by 10 to 15%. So this was the announcement that a lot of people were waiting for. Do you understand what it means or the impact it has on you and different categories of Singaporeans? Today I'm here not to explain to you the policy, but I'm going to share with you what it means to different sectors of the Singapore population. To summarize the change very simply, in the past, the lease of a HDB, once it reaches less than 60 years, there would be restrictions on CPF usage. Now, instead of the 60 years, which affected many of the older flats that were more than 40 years old, the new model actually looks whether the flat can cover you up to 95 years of age. Okay? So if your flat and your age is at least 95 years old, you will have no restrictions and you would be able to use 100% of the HDB's valuation limit for your CPF. Okay? So, who will this affect? There are 4 categories that we are looking at in this video. The first category is HDB flats with more than 60 years lease. Second would be older HDB flats who currently have less than 60 years lease. Third category would be buyers, young buyers, and the fourth category would be older buyers. Let's look at each of these categories individually to determine what would be the possible impact of each group. The first is the HDB flats with a lease of greater than 60 years. So before Lawrence Wong made this announcement, what happened was that due to the restrictions on the older flats, which are quite significant, for example, for the older flats, when the flat drops to less than 60 years old, as you can see from this diagram, the CPF usage ranges from 42% to 83%, depending on the age of the youngest eligible owner using CPF at the time of the purchase. This is very detrimental for any old flat looking to find a buyer, and it's a very stark difference because once the flat crosses that 60-year lease mark, the changes come into place. It's not a gradual change. So I believe this 95 years policy is good that the government to implement it, because after all, the key objective of this measure is to make sure that everybody who's buying a HDB flat, even if it is an old flat, does ensure that they have a home to stay till their later years. So let's look at the first category, HDB flats that are greater than 60 years old. Demand, I would expect for these flats to drop. That's because some of the demand would be shifted to the second category of HDB flats, which are less than 60 years lease left. They would not be as heavily judged as they are currently right now, because buyers will still be able to use their CPF as long as they are at least 35 years of age or more, depending on the number of years left on the HDB's lease. So the HDB demand will drop for the HDBs that's more than 60 years lease, and the demand will increase for the HDBs that's less than 60 years lease. So when we look at demand as a function of prices of HDB flats that has more than 60 years lease might have a slight drop as more buyers can consider the flats that has less than 60 years lease, which might increase the price slightly. These flats have been seriously affected by the cooling measures, as it has been difficult to find buyers for them. Now, I think it will be slightly easier, and this increase in demand would also result in a slight increase in the prices of such HDB flats. Then we look at the buyers. From the perspective of the buyers, you have the young buyers and the old buyers. In the video that I spoke about how to retire with real estate, old buyers, in my opinion, would benefit the most from this measure, because sometimes if you are more senior buyer, it's time for you to retire real estate. You may be okay with buying a cheaper flat, but previously when you wanted to buy this cheaper flat, it tended to also have a short lease, and that restricts your CPF usage. So you still tend to be looking for flats with longer leases. Now you don't have this concern anymore, because if you're in your 60s, late 50s, you can buy a flat that has 40 years of lease left or 50 years for a good price and still use all your CPF. So one of the biggest benefits of this segment would be the older buyers. Okay? For the younger buyers, I would actually think that the effect here is very small. There's not much difference to the younger buyers. Not much difference. Because if you are a younger buyer and you are looking to buy an older HDB flat, firstly, you shouldn't want to do that in the first place. But if you don't mind and you plan to maybe stay in it for life, it's still a good. It will result in a slight increase in the price, which makes it slightly less affordable. At the same time, because you are still young, let's say for example you are 30 years old or maybe 25 years old, if you need the flat to be at least 70 years lease left for you to use 100% of your CPF. So it really restricts you when you want to buy an older flat as a young buyer. At the same time, because I think that the effect on price on the newer flats would be marginal, because people still value the newer flats a lot, you will not actually benefit much from any drop of price at all in the newer flats. Overall, for the entire HDB market, I think this is definitely a good measure, as it would help to control the drop in prices for the HDB market, and people will know that even if their flat is old, there are suitable buyers who can use the CPF for the flat. In case you would like to read more about this topic, I've wrote an article about it with more details. Please click the link in the video description below. I come out with new content every Tuesdays and Thursdays. Drop me a comment, leave me a message, let me know what I can improve on, and if you would like me to cover any specific topics. Take care, and I'll see you soon.